I'll just wait a couple more seconds until we got 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in Switzerland, Zurich, that is. And welcome, guys. Welcome to the first Unit8 webinar of 2026. And the topic couldn't be hotter today. We publish every year the Tech Radar. It's become a massive document that really looks at the technology, that looks at where things are going right now today, that CIOs, CTOs, heads of data, and heads of AI need to look at, need to think about, and to understand a little bit the tech landscape. And today I've got 4 people in front of you, well, including me. Let me just quickly show you some pictures. So quick to myself, Alex Dean. I'm part of the BD team, part of the sales team. I've got Moz with me today, tech director, our GenAI guru, and the creator behind the wizard. We have Michal, our CTO and co-founder, and Veronica, our data and AI architect, who are all going to be able to give us some insights on why the Tech Radar is more important than ever, and how a CIO or CTO could be using this. And hopefully at the end of today, you'll not only be able to come with a download link for the Tech Radar itself, but have some great insights that you've taken away from the discussions that we're going to have later on as part of the panel discussion. Now, really important, please do post your questions into the chat. So we do have a live chat that we can look at. We're going to moderate the chat, and we are looking forward to answering some of those questions directly in the webinar today. This is not a pre-recorded session you're joining, guys. This is live, and you have the chance to put us on the spot and ask us some tricky questions as well. So let me hand over the mic to Michal, our co-founder.
Thank you, Alex. It's maybe important to say why we building this Tech Radar, and we do it twice a year. And if you imagine the situation as a big enterprise, perhaps you are one of the leaders, CIO, CTO, CDIO, head of data, and you're just embarking on this journey to build a data platform or new AI agentic stack. You're starting the project, and after 6 months, we're realizing that what you build is actually doesn't make a cut. There are many vendors out there who are sometimes over-promising, and the such situation is actually different. And for that reason, we built this Tech Radar to guide our customers and help them decide which tools are mature today, which tools perhaps are lacking in some functionalities, and help them decide what to pick in the given situation. So with that effort, we created this publication called Tech Radar, and perhaps we move to the next part to tell you how we build it, how we divide the ecosystem of different tools, and how we classify them. And I will hand over now to Veronica to tell you more about that.
Yeah, so before we dive into the very specific topics, let's take a step back, and I will try to explain you how to read Radar, and more importantly, how to use it. Radar actually is not a list of exciting tools. It's something more. It's a decision framework. It reflects what we see across real enterprise projects, so at our client deployments. What is stable enough to scale, what still needs some controlled experimentation, and where we believe the caution is warranted. For CIOs and CTOs, this is about prioritization under the constraints that they have. The constraints there might be budget, risk, regulatory pressure, and also the talent, the in-house talent that they have. We structured the radar around 4 domains that you see here on the slide, and together they define modern enterprise data and AI stack. The first domain is generative AI, perhaps the most hyped one this year. This includes LLMs, orchestration frameworks, agents, structured outputs, evaluation tools, governance layers. What has changed in this domain in 2026 is that the focus shifted from model capability to the orchestration and control. The question is no longer which model is best, The question is, can you operate this model safely and at scale? For the enterprise leaders, this is about consolidation into enterprise GPT's patterns by replacing the fragmented tool usage with governed, auditable systems. The second domain is the foundation. That's your data and analytic platform. This is the lakehouse, warehouse, data lake architecture, semantic layers, data catalogs, data observability, data products, and also the interoperability standards. These layers determine whether your AI, which sits on top of that, can become reliable or if it will be chaotic. This is where the long-term advantage is built. That's your foundation. Models, they can be easily swapped. They are on the top. And data foundation cannot. The third domain is machine learning and data science. The foundational machine learning is still critical. Predictive maintenance, causal inference, federated learning, they were not replaced by generative AI yet. We see increasing pressure here around robustness, explainability, compliance, and there are also many new regulations that increasingly shape how machine learning must be designed and governed. And last but not least, the fourth domain is infrastructure and XOps. This includes DevOps, AI Ops, ML Ops, FinOps, things like just-in-time security, orchestrations, and the biggest focus this year, sovereignty. If the infrastructure layer is unstable, the entire stack is unstable. So these four domains, they are not independent. They form a system, and Radar allows you to assess the maturity of the whole system, the whole data stack, not just within one silo. And now let's talk about the rings. So in Radar, in those four domains, we divide them further into each of them, further into the rings. The rings are adopt, trial, assess, and hold. Adopt means we confidently recommend this for the enterprise scale. Governance patterns exist, scalability is in place, operating models, they are also in place. We see repeatable ROI. Trial, we are not that sure. This means worth pursuing, but best practices are emerging, but not fully established. It's good fit for structured innovation. The third ring is assess. It means promising, but not yet operationally stable. Monitor closely, pilot carefully, but don't standardize yet. And hold is not never. Hold is actually a watch list for the next wave of maturity. But for now, either the ecosystem is not mature or the organizational prerequisites are missing. And now, knowing what the rings mean and what the quadrants are, let's take a look how the whole radar looks like. So here you can see the four rings, and they are all divided into the quadrants. On the left-hand side, you have a small fraction of all the tools and technologies and trends that we listed. Here the examples are the GenAI Adopt ring, GenAI Trial ring, and also Infra and XOps Assess ring. Now the question is how this whole thing can help us guide decision. The radar can help to align the technologies with the several realities like this, what I've mentioned earlier, the risk appetite, regulatory exposure, talent maturity, and also the strategic ambition. So at the enterprise level, the real question is not what's exciting. The question is what we can deploy responsibly. So if organization operates in a heavily regulated industry where resilience is the most important, we have clients like this in finance, in pharma, in insurance, where these are the most important parts. Their scaling zone most likely will sit in the adopt ring. There is where you can standardize and consolidate. Technologies in trial are typically what we recommend for structured proof of concepts. So this is something that the companies, they cannot capitalize on it yet. They can check it and then evaluate whether it fits their use case or not. So this is not for random experimentation, but controlled pilots with clear success criteria. There is the area where you explore upside without compromising your architecture. Technologies in assess are usually appropriate only for the organizations which has a very strong internal talent and real appetite for experimentations. It's a bit R&D territory. It's where advanced teams can explore differentiation but not scale it yet. We rarely recommend assess technologies for enterprise-wide rollouts. And HALT in this guiding also has its own role, and it's not irrelevant. In fact, it's my personal favorite bucket because HALT is where future usually starts. We do not recommend adoption in enterprise environments today for these tools and technologies because they are often the newest ideas, the most experimental, sometimes also the most hyped. But internally at Unit8, it is where we stay curious. We run demos, we organize engineering groups, deep dives, we challenge the assumptions. And actually, this is what makes the radar dynamic. The tools, they can move. Today, HALT can become next year's assess. Assess can mature into trial, and trial finally into adopt. The movement is earned through the gain of stability, adding governance, and also real enterprise proofs of adoption of these tools. So the radar is not about telling every client to use everything in adopt. Adopt is scale, trial is structured innovation, assess is R&D, and HALT is a watch list. And what we see in 2026 is that the biggest risk is not under innovation. It's scaling the immature technologies without governance. Exists actually to prevent such scenarios.
Wow, Veronica, thank you so much for taking us through this journey right now on what the tech radar is. And from my personal sort of perspective, there's so many fantastic new technologies emerging right now on the landscape that organizations need to think about. For example, N8N. It's such a newcomer in the agentic space that it's moved so fast from maybe a year ago as hold to now actually trial, and I'm seeing more and more organizations adopting it. So the speed at which things are moving from the outside into the inside is becoming much, much, much faster actually today. So it's good to have this radar to see what's coming and also to double check on the velocity of things and how fast they move. Now, we don't have time to go through the whole tech radar today, obviously. There's too much in it. So what we've done is we've picked out a couple of sort of key topics that we've heard from our customers that are really important to them right now. And I would like to initiate our panel discussion to have a look at 4 main areas. And the 4 areas I'd like to dive into with you guys today is, on the one side, the rise of shadow AI. And I find that's very important from a C-level perspective, CIO, CTOs, to understand how can I manage my AI landscape. The role of data. We keep on getting organizations coming to us, asking us to help them with AI strategies. And then we realize they might not have the data strategy ready to go. Let's talk a little bit about that. I want to talk a little bit about the future of SaaS, which is a very contested topic, I would say, out there on the internet. And I'm keen to find out what kind of take you guys have on that. And then finally, 2025 was supposed to be the year of agents, but it was really only the year where people looked at agents. But I am seeing a massive shift in agentic capabilities in 26. So let's have a look at the symphony, or rather the chaos that they're bringing with us. So those are the 4 main areas I'd like to dive into. And I'm going to kick off with the rise of shadow AI. So question out there. there's so many AI adoptions, and so many AI tools and things, SaaS products, non-SaaS products. Every week there's a new one. There's thousands on the market now. Yeah, but even the big players. If I'm talking about Claude as an add-on to PowerPoint, or Claude Code, or if that's OpenAI Codex, or if that's Copilot and GitHub, there's so many options. And some of them are hosted in the US, some of them are hosted in Russia or in China, and some of them you don't even know where they're hosted. So how can a modern CIO that really wants to drive innovation, that wants to be seen as driving innovation within the organization, that's received the mandate from the CEO to drive AI innovation, how can that CIO still stay in control of this super fast landscape while still delivering on the pace of change?
Yeah, you are right. And I believe that it will be only worse because of all these vibe codings and the support that we now receive in creating new tools. They will be popping up even more and more. And the problem of how to keep the control with still being fast in delivering is not the problem that I would solve personally in the organizations. I would frame it a bit differently, because the issue is not that there are too many AI tools. Actually, everyone is free to pick the ones that they want to use and just ignore the rest. The issue actually is that the organizations, they don't have the control plane for these tools. The reality is that employees, they will experiment. Developers will try to use Cursor, Codex, GitHub Copilot. Marketing will test also the video generators. Finance will use their own copilots. And we cannot, and most likely we should not try to stop that. The piece of innovation is simply too fast, and we all want the productivity gains. So what the CIO needs now is not fewer tools. What they need is some centralization in the architecture. This is what we also see on the market. So stuff like we've mentioned in Radar, like Enterprise GPT and the platform providers who are all now trying to design their products as data gravity centers. They are trying to address exactly what you are asking for. So the first step is to centralize the core models through Enterprise GPT layer. This will give single sign-on, role-based access control, some auditability, logging, also clear data boundaries. So if people experiment, then they experiment in governed environment. And the second step is that we need to have separate interfaces for the interface, and also separate layer for the intelligence itself. Whether someone is using Copilot, whatever agent, some assistant, the underlying models, the data access, orchestration, this all should be separated and centrally controlled. Tools at the edge, they can change, and they will change. They change rapidly now, and they will change even more rapidly in future. But the intelligence backbone, and here I mean your data platform, it should not. It has completely different life cycle. So your data that is belonging to your company represents the same entities the whole time, and you should have very stable policies around this. And actually, this is the first step, to standardize orchestration and governance patterns and also policies. I know it's the most boring part of it all, because that's the governance and policies, but this is what should be standardized, and we should not standardize the usage of individual tools, because we will never catch them. That would be so fast. Tools, they will be changing rapidly, and governance, identity, access management, monitoring, data policies, this is something what should stay stable. Policies and standard must be simply set on the foundations, which very often is the data. Once it's clear what's allowed, what is the allowed usage of your data sets, then the risk that the new AI agent will accidentally get the access to this data is reduced. And shadow AI becomes a strategic risk when sensitive data leaves your organization. So when agents act without the control, without oversight, or when there is no explainability, when no one can tell which model made which decision based on which data, it's difficult to disagree that this exposure is real. So here, like my idea for solving that problem would not be restriction, it would be consolidation and keeping the innovation at the edge and governance in the center. It's how CIO can continue delivering innovation very fast without losing control on the most critical assets, which is actually his data. And that's how the organizations can also move to governed scale.
Okay, so very quickly recap this before I pass it on. So what I'm hearing out of this is effectively, on the one side, reduce friction. So get single sign-on up and running, make sure people can sign in with a corporate identity. Reducing that friction will also give you governance in the same stroke, because you're controlling access and you're making sure they have to sign in with the right credentials. And then in this area where you're reducing friction, you're also going to then give them access to the data that they need to be able to work in. So suddenly you're controlling the data boundaries and you're making sure that the tools that you're giving them have the data they need to work with, and you've removed the friction. So you're enabling them much more than actually trying to stop them from something else. So it's more of an enablement strategy than a restriction strategy. Michal.
Absolutely. And maybe we can share also our personal experience from Unit8. We also have to deal with this reality, and as an advisory consultancy, we have to obviously know how different tools work in practice. So we need to test them internally. Yes, we have to test Anthropic code, OpenAI tools, open source, and that means we need to enable our teams to use those tools in secure fashion with some guardrails. And we internally have a very tiered approach to this problem. So first of all, we're dividing the tools into 3 categories. So the approved for daily use, restricted tools for client data, and also no-go zone. Yeah, so tools that we would have never used because of various reasons, perhaps related to where the models are hosted, in which jurisdiction, etc.
Yeah, actually, it was just on the receiving end of that, trying to get access to Claude, and the process was really good. I registered a support ticket, and they had a look at it, and then I needed to provide the business case, and now finally I've got some extra capabilities to be able to work on my presentations. So yeah, the process works. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and our IT work on that part. You know, they make sure we have good contracts in place with those providers, ensure that those tools are connected to SSO. We have also centralized billing and enterprise plans in place, so data is secure and belongs to us.
I guess that's an important aspect when we're thinking about sort of when I'm going into a technology, making sure that the provider does have enterprise scale capabilities. So it was only ever since ChatGPT brought out the ChatGPT enterprise version did it really become an attractive option for many organizations to start using it for their critical data, because they could now trust that their data was being handled in a way that they wanted it to be secured, maybe only in Europe, no training on that data, and these enterprise contracts, they enable that. And some SaaS providers might not have that kind of enterprise capabilities. Now, before we run out of time, I do have to get through my other topics. Vero, you mentioned something earlier, just briefly. You talked about data quality as a side note, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit. Because one thing I've noticed is that effectively the AI needs to deliver quality output, because more and more organizations want to use it for decision making. And when I joined the revolution of data-driven decision-making a few years ago, I had no idea how important it would actually be today to have the right data to even let AIs make the right decisions. So thinking about the role that data plays today, how does a strategy look like?
So you are asking for the strategy to bring the data for the right shape to enable the AI capabilities that will sit on the top, right?
Well, let me give you some context. So the CIO needs to deliver AI capabilities. So mandate AI has to work. But then he realizes that the data foundation isn't there. So now he has to build a data strategy, but he also has to do an AI strategy. So suddenly you have to do both, and it feels like you're being torn in two different directions. How do you handle that kind of conflict?
Yeah, that's right what you are saying. So very often those CIOs are also head of AI, and they are expected to deliver some AI quickly because everyone wants the innovation, visible impacts, productivity gains. They want agents, transformation, all that fancy words. And this person is also responsible for data, and that's where the tension starts, because the uncomfortable truth is simple: good AI requires good data. That's the very old problem: garbage in, garbage out.
So data has always been a massive problem, and garbage out is an old saying, and it's become more critical now than ever before. Why?
Yeah, because AI, like for delivering AI, we have very low barrier to entry. A lot of tools for building AI agents is now click through, only UI. You don't even need to code to create your own agent. So it seems like a low hanging fruit. But the experimentation is easier. But this didn't remove the dependency on the strong foundations. If anything, actually, it made the gap more visible. So if your data is fragmented, inconsistent, undocumented, not managed, not governed, AI will only amplify that chaos. It will not fix that. So across the enterprises, we see very clear pattern. Companies that invested early in the harmonization, in data platforms, in semantic layers, they have catalogs, governance. Now they can move incredibly fast. They build agents and they build the AI application within weeks sometimes. Sometimes even shorter. Sometimes it might be one day, because they have the context, and this is structured and accessible. The AI can thrive on their data, can use it to enrich and to reason. That's the fuel. And we also have the clients that did this groundwork, so we see it on our daily basis, and now they think that the innovation is, it feels easy, it feels very fast because the platform is stable. And also on the other hand, there are some organizations which postponed the data harmonization, and now they are trying to build AI, but on top of this fragmented, not managed system. So this is also where the CIOs, they are pulled in different direction. They are under pressure to deliver AI, but the foundations simply aren't ready.
Okay, so this definitely is a prioritization problem here. So we need the foundations, but you mentioned quite a few things. You mentioned the ability to discover data, to use data quality. So when I'm thinking about data foundations, is there any sort of prioritization I can apply here to sort of get ready in a way that doesn't stop me from driving innovation?
Me as engineer, I would like to say, stop this AI and fix your data for the next 2 years.
That's
But
what I am.
but this is not realistic, and the business doesn't work like that. So they need to do this in sequence, and they need to to pick their gaps, their wins. So if their data foundations are weak, the priority is not to be perfect. It's not perfection. It's to establish minimum viable backbone, clear data ownership, at least some semantic layer, some basic controls, and also the access, so the agents also can operate in that environment. They don't need to fix everything, but if they want to have AI in some domains, they at least need to clean that. They need to fix the domains where they want the AI to operate in. So if foundations are already a bit more mature, then those organizations, they can focus on the orchestration layers, agent frameworks, and also enterprise GPT patterns. That's where they will benefit most if they already have something done with their data. But even then, actually, when the data is done, the biggest differentiator will not be the model. It would be actually this quality of context that they can provide it. I believe that Moz also has an idea to go deeper into the context topic.
Yeah, Moz?
Yeah, so we will come back to this like in a bit of a dedicated session at the end of the session. So yeah, I mean, we actually see also examples from like bigger players like OpenAI itself. How do they eat their own data? You know, how do they manage that? Because also you can imagine at their scale, I mean, they're very good engineers, but also there is some also mess probably, or like it's not perfect, yeah, but they take care of it. But then I think, as Vero said, they're at a good spot, which it's not perfect, but it's not garbage in, garbage out. It's still very valuable data. And now at this point, they can build data also to improve the data itself. So like work with agents also to improve on the data quality and so on. But maybe I will just tease it now and we will come back to it later.
Oh yeah, I'll come back to you on this one later. I'm sure you're going to have some good stuff for me. So what I'm hearing here is effectively, yes, we need the foundations, but we have to be pragmatic. We can't solve it all in one go. So pick your battles. And the one thing I liked about your statement was pick your battles in the right domains. So if you want to drive AI innovation in a specific domain, well, then maybe make sure the data foundation in that domain is ready for it. You don't have to fix your data problems across the whole organization. You might pick the domains where you need to have certain quality or certain access or certain data sources to be able to drive that innovation. And this is also a great way to start thinking about a pragmatic way of building up a data foundation or data strategy that didn't exist. Not in a big bang, but in a sequential way, use case by use case, where the use cases will then drive the capabilities you need and hopefully also drive the benefits and the return on investment you're going to get out of them. And this is actually the way we love to work with most of our customers anyway.
Yeah. Just one point, Alex, and I would echo out what Moz and Veronika said previously. Personally, I never heard from any CIO in the past the statement, "Oh, my data is totally clean and ready to use." You know, there are degrees of data readiness. You don't need to have clean data. You need to have data at quality that is ready to use. And good news is that LLMs can help you speed this process up today. Yes, by accessing the systems, it's much easier to write connectors today, and also cleansing the data is much easier.
Yeah, and this is the fascinating thing about AI, because if the data is not good enough, you can now start using AI itself to get the data clean. The possibilities today and data cleansing and data quality improvement are much more advanced compared to where they were 5 years ago. But it does feel like sort of the chicken feeding the egg sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, something else that I also want to touch on with you, Moz, in a minute as well. It's a topic that's close to my heart, which is safety, sustainability, traceability, sort of ethical AI. That's a topic that I'm also hearing more and more in the market when it comes to how can we make sure that what we're doing is really going to be safe and trustworthy and sustainable. Do you have any ideas when it comes to AI safety and data?
So here again, the foundations. So for the AI safety, first we need to control this access, and we need to know what's in our data and which data can be actually accessed by these tools. So these data foundations and semantic layers, they sit in this year firmly in our adopt ring. So the enterprise advantage won't come from access to models, but actually the access to models everyone it has. So the advantage will come from the quality of the data and the context these models can operate on. And for the safety you are asking on, this is also very good question. I can talk a lot about this, but I'm not sure if that's if we are done with the platform topics and we switch to the agents one.
Okay, I'll leave that for the agent one then. I'll get back to that one later again. It's definitely a topic I want to explore a little bit. So I think we've covered the big chunk of the data topic. Yeah. So as the way I understood this, AI is very much sort of the way to accelerate. Yeah, and the platform is the enabler, and it's how you put it, the engine. Yeah, that runs underneath it. Now, what about the future of SaaS? Let me move on to the next topic from a timing perspective. I'm hearing over and over again, either in conversations in networking or on LinkedIn as well, that people are asking themselves what's going to happen with SaaS in the future. It's so easy now to just vibe code your solution. I think there was one quote by a famous programmer: "Now is the best time to have a problem to solve." Because you can solve the problem. You can write code even though you're not a coder. And there's one recent example I heard where a colleague's wife was trying to join two PDF documents together and said, "I can't do that because I haven't got the specific Acrobat Pro license to do that." And the answer was, well, just write code a Python script that does it for you. And she actually did. She'd never coded in her life. And there you go. She's now got a script she can use anytime to pull two PDFs together. So what is the future of SaaS really going to be? It's a hot topic, and I'm throwing this one over to you, Michael.
Sure. I think it's a very good question, very relevant today. We've seen a couple of weeks back a big sell-off happening on the stock market, eroding the value of the big tech companies, including Adobe, tools like Adobe, for example, and many others. I think we have to start with really acknowledging that vibe coding trend is real, and you can do effectively today with tools like Claude, ChatGPT, and others. You can really solve this simple tasks that were previously reserved to utility tools like, for example, Adobe, Acrobat Adobe, right? So all those tools that were solving those very simple things like merging PDFs, generating perhaps transcripts or generating presentations, tools that cost you $15 a month, are definitely at risk and under pressure today. Yes? And perhaps in the future, they're going to be really replaced by those single stop interfaces like ChatGPT. But there is another caveat, in that statement, SaaS is dead. I think there is actually space of tools, enterprise tools, that are quite resistant to that change. And these are all systems of record, like ERP systems, CRMs, financial platforms, HR systems. Those systems that were built over the decades, so there were teams that were building those systems over the decades. They thought really strongly how to structure the data and how to model the processes that operate on those data. And I think that space actually will not disappear, and frankly will be even more important, because it's not only us humans who will be using those systems of record, it's also agents who will be going through those databases and doing some work for us. So I think we're going to see some significant changes on the market, and there will be winners and losers. There is one fact that we can't really argue with, and cost of switching the tools is dramatically lower today. You can access those tools at much lower cost. You can perform migrations at much lower cost, much faster, and that would lead to the increased competition on the market.
It's a good point. The cost of switching has in the past been a way to lock in customers. Once you choose HubSpot as your CRM after 2 years of usage, you don't want to go through the pain of migrating to Salesforce or any other direction. And the fact that you can quite easily now code migrations between software is really putting the pressure on the SaaS providers themselves to keep on reinventing themselves and to keep on adding value. So I'm looking forward to the value add we're going to be experiencing, because SaaS providers can't be lazy anymore. They have to give more than just a piece of software they developed 5 years ago and maintain.
Yes. So locking through API layer data storage is not going to protect you anymore if you ask a SaaS provider.
Yeah, and on top of
have to provide the additional value to the users.
You can just use a tool that can effectively just scrape your website. There's an interesting question from Maren about OpenClaw as well, so I'll cover that in the Q&A section later. But these kind of agentic tools that can suddenly do things by themselves, and you give them the request, they could start doing full migrations for you, which is quite scary actually.
But I can still not foresee anything that can replace SAP, SAP actually. Where we can migrate that one, that's the question.
Oh man, so I don't think that we have lack of people who would like to see a solution to this problem you've just stated. But they have a very strong market position when it comes to ERP systems, especially with our customer base, because we do focus on large enterprise organizations, and SAP has provided them with capabilities they didn't have before. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see where the journey is going. I would say we'll have the same problems like any major SaaS provider has. The latest partnerships they've been engaging with Databricks and with Snowflake, and now also with Microsoft and Fabric, they've realized exactly what Michael said. Data, they cannot lock you in anymore, and they will have to give access to the data. There's even EU laws that force them to. So they've realized they'll have to partner with these data providers. And I'm really curious to see where the journey is going to go, with also AI being a major push here in automation and automating business processes. So we've got time for one more question. So this is now talking about AI and agents, and this fits also quite nicely with the OpenClaw question. We're seeing a bit of a revolution happening, and it's really around orchestrating all of this capability. On the one side, again, I mentioned the topic ethical, and with ethical AI come a lot of things you need to put in place. So before we go into the full orchestration side of things, I would like to unlock a little bit the topic around what does it mean right now to orchestrate AI solutions, Moss?
Yeah, so it's a very good question and a difficult question because also the word has been used in many different contexts. Let's say the whole orchestration these days. But if you focus on AI, let's say, around data, which by the way, we have an example about how, for example, OpenAI is doing this in-house for themselves. Yeah, I think there are quite a few gates that you have to care about. First, you have to think about the models themselves, the sovereignty topic, like for this part of data that I'm working with, for example, if you're a medical provider, if you're in Switzerland, then you have to do something which is sitting in Switzerland. For sure, from an inference perspective, but also maybe from provider perspective, at some point there would be some constraints also who built that model. But then from the orchestration perspective, one part is how do I route different things to different models, which also respect, let's say, privacy, but law also. But at the same time, the technicality is still there. Let's say if you are going to connect, like an entry point to, I don't know, 100 different tools in your company, all of your APIs, all of the systems you have back there, Salesforce, SAP, HubSpot, whatever else, things can go wrong very quickly if you have not orchestrated things correctly and you don't have governance properly in place. I think there are good questions to ask, and I will keep it short so we can go a bit deeper later. Think about it like this. Who on which systems can read and who on which systems can write? Who on which systems can delete stuff? Who on which systems can improve or modify data snapshots? All of these questions you need to have answers for, and there is no silver bullet that this is it for all of that. Yeah, so you need to have a proper matrix for all of this in place. Then you will use proper solutions to orchestrate all of these read-write, let's say, combinations also, because also these things can fail. Also, and you need orchestration to be resilient towards mistakes, can recover, and kind of pre-plan and orchestrate again to execute differently. But then it's kind of like an endless, let's say, discussion. But what I want to plant is think about who can be also human or agent, can do what on which system, and should it have access to all of them at the same time or not? Because orchestration also becomes a whole jungle and very difficult if, let's say, the agent or human has access to everything at the same time.
Okay, so you're looking at very much from a sort of a security perspective, and making sure you coordinate and control access to different information. And
yeah.
And when I'm thinking about agents, of course, different agents will have different capabilities. So they'll have different data sources. And there's also a way to sort of orchestrate these different agents together to act as a cohesive. And this is also a little bit where I'm seeing really fun and games happening with things like OpenClaw, where you've suddenly got like a swarm, a hive of agents working for you. So I'm seeing two different worlds here. And on the one side, I'm seeing the sort of the structured orchestrated version that you have a lot of control over the orchestration, and then I've got this like self-orchestrated adoption of OpenClaw, where an LLM kind of tries to figure out himself which agent, sub-agent to call, create sub-agent itself to use, and does its own orchestration. So I'm seeing two different sort of let's call it schools of thought when it comes to how to orchestrate this. But it does bring me to one question that GM did post in the chat earlier. When I'm using agents to do any kind of work, for example, I'm using an agent to clean data. The question that she posted was how can I make sure this clean data doesn't suddenly introduce some kind of bias that was in the model to suddenly taint my data going forward? How can I remove this kind of fear of bias or risk of bias?
Maybe I can take a small part of this and I let Vero to continue. Keep in mind that you don't have to jump to autonomous agents from day one. It's always a better idea that you start with interactive agents, that you still are completely in control what happens. And then if this goes well for a few months, and then you start to make it more autonomous, have maybe the approval at the end, and only at that point it becomes much more autonomous. Take the example of metadata documentation. You want to pull like let's say columns from your database and document them, properly structured so you can, have them used upstream better. I mean, the first thing is not to write this pipeline and just, let the agent create metadata documentation and put it in the destination. You actually would do this much more interactively. You ask for update on metadata documentation, you see it, you approve it, you challenge it, you have back and forth, the chatbot style maybe, but then only after a certain amount of time and cycles have passed, you start to think about making it autonomous. So kind of you are the judge for quite a few months until the judge becomes a bit more automatic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what Moss said is one of the principles, and actually one that is different than in traditional software development. So keeping human in the loop, but moving them from execution to supervision. And of course, where the risk is high, we need more human control. We don't need it for every trivial action. And as Moss said, we can slowly move from the supervision and human in the loop approval steps and stuff like that to the full autonomy. And there are two more important topics in the responsible AI, let's say. So first is the principle of least privilege, well known to everybody. We need to constrain autonomy by design. So by design, those agents, they should not be able to do actually nothing. We need to give them the permissions gradually and build from the minimal permission and extend. They should not be fully open-ended, and they need to operate in scopes, in boundaries. They cannot do whatever they want. So things that we all know, which is like role-based access control, limitation to tool access, also explicit definition what the agent is allowed to do. This is the one of the basic. The next one is monitoring. Also, like in software, the same stuff. So we need to make everything observable. If we cannot see what the agent did, why it did it, which model was used, which data was accessed, then we cannot scale it responsibly. So all that is logging, monitoring, tracing, evaluation pipelines. This is something that is not optional. It was not optional in software development. It is not optional now with AI. And maybe the last point that I will add is about something that we also see as emerging on the market, is about red teaming. Most of teams, they test happy paths. They demo happy paths. They don't test what the agent would do if there is some unexpected input, when there is some attack. And now in this year, actually in the last year, one of the biggest provider, which is Azure, actually provided even explicit feature for helping with AI red teaming. There are agents which may attack other agents to check whether they are behaving within their boundaries. And yeah, that's it.
That's a really good insight, and thank you for sharing that. And I think it also fits in quite nicely with Marlon's question. There's a lot of things you can do right now to put in safeguards and foundations. You can put in the checks and balances. You can secure down least access, limited access capabilities, isolating tools, isolating data sources. All of those kind of things you can already do today to make sure that whatever you design in an orchestrated way is governed, is secure, and sets you up as a good foundation for ethical AI use. And that's also what you need to put in place for those self-serving agentic solutions that are cropping up, like OpenClaw. I believe there will be more iterations, and yeah, Marlon, you're quite right. There will be versions with better safeguards out there, but it doesn't stop your organization from making first sure the safeguards are in there. So focus on those safeguards. Focus on least privileged design principles, do your red teaming, do your testing, do your monitoring, and you're actually already set up for the next evolution that comes towards us at rapid pace, massively rapid pace. Okay, Moz, I think you've got a couple more slides to show us before we wrap this up today.
Yeah, so maybe we talked a lot about the principles. I want to show also one practical example, both from one provider side and one from our side. So I don't know if you have seen this article from OpenAI called Inside Our In-House Data Agent. So what OpenAI did was, okay, we are building all these agents for everyone. Why we don't use it for ourselves? So they decided we have like something like 7 petabytes of data that would be needed to do the work correctly, which means both making models, taking decisions on go-to-market, looking at their, like problems, like for example, why users are unhappy with something, so all the feedback. So imagine, like from one side, the business spectrum to the really hardcore engineering part of the company. Yeah. So you can see a few examples on the left. For example, someone asking about like usage, like why it, like was in a certain way. Or like, you see in the bottom, like we had a kind of a big drop in connector usage. What happened? Yeah. So of course, if you think, if these were questions we would ask as companies ourselves, it would be very hard to answer them. Yeah. So what we do is we'll probably explore, what data we have, ask data engineers to write custom code, get things out, and it takes forever until we have the insight, which might be too late also. So what OpenAI did was that they created a whole fleet of agents which can, with complete role-based access control and pass-through permissions, which means someone cannot see what they don't already have access to. Yeah. So to talk to all of the data which is around. Yeah. And then what they learned out of this exercise was it's not so easy. Yeah. And so they started to add very custom pieces to this. They realized that the context is very important. It's not that this is the data, let's see what's inside of it. They have to really care about metadata curation, so all the data foundations. Yeah. They have to organize the knowledge, kind of better. And they have to kind of also use memory to some extent, that if someone already said, hey, this is not the way to solve the problem, like the whole stack remembers to solve the problem differently for the next time a user asks the same question. Then, like as I mentioned, all the permissions should be passed through, which means you should not leak anything to anyone who has not access to it. Someone who is not having access to finance data should not be able to ask questions about that. Yeah. And then they did a lot of, let's say, good engineering approaches combined with bag of tricks to make responses very fast. They went from waiting a few minutes with thinking to get an answer about like why the connector usage dropped to kind of seconds up to a minute, by using a combination of memory, context, and also not giving all agents at the same time to the orchestrator for every possible situation. So they have all these proxy layers and kind of orchestration at several scales, such that to answer a question, you only get the right tool, so the tool is not confused to provide the answer. Maybe this would be an example that, for example, OpenAI is doing it for itself. I really recommend you read this article. But I want to show you like a mini example what we do for ourselves. So I want to give you an example how you can go to something like, let's say, ChatGPT or Copilot, doesn't matter, an AI interface, and do something like cloud engineering work from there with all of the permissions, which is quite scary, honestly. Yeah. So let's take the example that you can go to, let's say, something like ChatGPT. You have a collection of connectors, MCP, REST API, like with hard layers of authorization. And now you want to say, hey, go in our Azure, find all of the computes which are over provisions and they're creating cost without that needing be there, and optimize this for me. So we have created some tooling behind this that we use for ourselves. For example, we can say, hey, go find some of the subscriptions. So this is easy, it's just some read access. And then you can ask a complex question. Hey, go to this specific resource, find all of the computes. I want to see memory usage, CPU usage, like what's happening there. And this is a whole orchestration behind to find all of this information and bring a simple table for you to read. Of course, you can always ask, give me more details, less details, and you can go there. Then maybe you want to say, hey, estimate how much is this costing me? Yeah, because I want to optimize it. If it's insignificant, I wouldn't care about it. So then like there are all these steps of the orchestration. So you estimate, and then what happens after that is you say, okay, since you have right access, because like I gave you the right access, I approved for that for this agent at this moment. For me, configure some scaling, which will go in my cloud, find these expensive resources, scale them dynamically, and I would pay less costs. And actually what you see in the bottom right is a real scenario. You see the cost. I mean, you don't see the numbers because of the size of the font, but you see like this drop at the point we applied the scaling. And when I say we, there was no cloud engineer doing this by hand in, let's say, Azure portal. It was the agent through an interactive conversation, not autonomous, getting approval from me and going and executing the scheduling, and then the costs dropped, which in this case, it was quite small. This is a dev environment, but we are like simulating this for some of the clients, and there we are talking about like hundreds of thousands of cloud costs sometimes. Maybe having said that, I want to wrap it up and just give you some take-home messages about, like all we discussed. I think these are important questions you have to answer for your company and for yourself also. And the first thing is your data ready and also compatible with agentic AI? Think about all of the things we discussed about, data management, about security, but also about, like format and organization of the data. The second point is you should already have an implementation for governance in place. If not, do you have a plan and strategy already in place? If not, that's already too late and you have to act on it right now. The third point is, as we discussed also with all this SaaS commoditization and stuff like that, there is a very good possibility you can end up with an AI jungle if you don't have a strategy. You will have the AI in SAP and AI in Salesforce and AI in Quip and AI in G Drive, and all of them have different interfaces, and your users cannot benefit from them. They have to upskill on each and every tool to use that. So think about really this way, that can I go towards a unified user experience? Then I just go to one entry point and I can connect to different systems the way also we discussed with the OpenAI example and get things done, and users do not have to upskill per system. And of course, the last point is all of this will lead to some change management, and the way the workforce works will shift. Are you ready for that? Do you have a plan for that? And if not, we're of course more than happy to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, the change management always is a killer at the end, because too many organizations think about it as an afterthought and not necessarily as something to plan from at the beginning. And just thinking about your dashboard, Insta dashboard conversation in ChatGPT around your Azure subscription and getting an action, and this is the stuff that really excites me, because we're in an era now where we don't have to spend days or weeks trying to build dashboards to understand your data. I remember the first time I tried to build a Power BI dashboard on Azure. It was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare to build a decent Power BI dashboard on Azure. Resources and Azure consumption and things like that. And now you can just point an agent to say, give me the information I need. But the thing that really excites me now is the fact that you don't only look at your data anymore, you can act upon it. You can take action, you can make decisions, and you can really start shifting the needle when it comes to cost savings or in many different areas, if that's technology or if that's process. And there's more and more organizations that are doing it today. So it's an exciting time to have a problem, and it's an exciting time to solve it, and looking forward to where this journey is going to take us next. So we wrap it up, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining us today.